Hello. Hello, it's nice to see you. Hello, Kati.
See you as well.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really nervous.
Nervous. Really?
I'm really nervous, but I'm just gonna have to get over this. So
Oh,
I've got I've got my little notes.
just let go because
I
you.
know, I know. And the reason why I asked Spirit because I wasn't certain how much depth, do I go at 3,000 or do I 100 feet? And so Spirit gave me just kind of how much to go into.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. Excellent. Because this is why I wanted to do this interview with you, and maybe we should tell just a few words about our work together to those people who are going to see this video. I
Okay.
wanted to introduce Kati to you because we did some work, a hypnotherapy session together, and that was a really unique experience for both of us, I think, because she is receiving so much guidance and help. She's an excellent example of how we can connect to through our higher self to our spirit guides. So this is a lesson, a very inspiring lesson that you are going through. A lesson about how we can heal from trauma, how we can recover, how we can maintain this trust in our guides, because this is what's helping you most, because you're so open and so really trusting.
Yeah.
So this is an amazing gift that you have, and that's why I wanted to share this particular story, or your journey. It's a better expression. This journey with other people, because there are so many women who are going through trauma. We all have different kind of trauma, but it still affects us almost the same way. It takes away our light. So the great gift is here to maintain this openness to the higher self, maintain this trust and love and light, and to be able to share it with ourselves just as much as with our environment. So I'm really happy to have you here. You
Thank
don't
you.
need to be nervous.
Thank you. Thank you for, well, and I didn't know that my session with you was unique because, I only know it from my perspective, so I don't know what you see on your end. So I guess it's helpful to know that maybe I can be an inspiration to others because of my
Absolutely.
unique journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because during these hypnotherapy sessions, one of our goals is to establish a resource. I call it a resource because we tend to believe when we are traumatized that we are helpless, that there is no one and nothing that can help us. So this is a mindset, a state of consciousness that we get into where we are closed up. That's what abuse and trauma does to us. It isolates us. Your example is unique because you are within the trauma, within those experiences, but at the same time you are able to come out and see yourself from this higher perspective. So this is what makes your example so unique, and you can transition. You could during the session, and that was really amazing. It was very easy to guide you and just to inspire you. Just go here and there and move around the picture. When we are traumatized, when we are in that state of mind, we tend to see through a very narrow perspective, a tunnel vision. And when you came out of that perspective to your higher self, you started connecting dots at an amazing speed. And you started describing this fantastic picture where everything was connected. The relationship between your mother-in-law and you, and the husband, and everything just started to fall into place. And I love to see as things start to fall into place, and things that used to sound weird, or what does she have to do with the whole experience, when
Yeah.
when you are so young, and what does, and then suddenly the picture gets so clear. And that's what I found it really amazing, a very good example and inspiring example of how you are using your own resources to heal yourself.
Mm. Wonderful.
Yeah. So I would like to ask, first of all, to hear it from you, so that
Yeah.
people could hear it from you. So, what was the issue that you needed help with?
Well, it's a multi-layered issue. The first thing that's important to know, oh, and this just gets me really emotional. Um, I've been with my husband for 35 years, and I've been married over 30 years. And it's been an abusive relationship where he physically, emotionally, and psychologically abused me, and he controlled me. And 2 months ago, he left me because he just couldn't heal with the trauma that's coming up. I went through a spiritual awakening. Oh, I didn't want to cry, but here I am. I went through a spiritual awakening over 7 years ago, where I almost died after a liver cleanse. And I went through 4 to 5 years of really, really difficult times. And when I finally got off the medication and started coming back to me, that's when my abilities started to come through. And so all of a sudden, I was no longer the same person. I was, and I knew after the liver cleanse that something had shifted, but I didn't realize how much things were going to shift. And all of a sudden, I started talking to spirit, and it was slow and bumpy. It was not an easy ride, and I hid that from my husband for oh my goodness, I think it was 2 years, because I told him this past February. Anyway, because I come from a traditional Christian background and construct, and I knew it would be really challenging for him to accept that now I'm talking to spirits, and one of them being his best friend who died 2 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, he was, in addition to Eric, who is, I call him, he's my conductor. So he kind of orchestrates everything. And I've got Archangel Michael, who is my bouncer, and he only allows certain people to come through. And then my husband's best friend who died. And so there was this whole other health journey piece of it that I went through, which I won't go into today. But in February, I asked my husband if he was having an affair or thinking of having an affair, because he was even less present in the marriage. And in that 2 to 3 hour conversation, I shared with him, I said, you've never asked me how I've changed since I did the liver cleanse, and I'm no longer depressed. I'm healthy, I'm functioning. And you've never asked how I've changed. And I've been asking you to prompt me because I have so much I wish to share. And so I shared with him that day that I now talk to spirits. And it was definitely a challenge for him. And so me sharing that with him helped to explain to him why I was different, if you will. Because he had noticed I was different, but he couldn't quite figure out why. I was starting to speak up for myself, no longer accepting his abusive behavior, his controlling behavior, which was then causing more ripple effects in the marriage. So everything just changed in my life. And I had asked Spirit last summer, a year ago, I said, I don't know that my marriage is going to survive this, because most people, where you have a spiritual awakening, the closest people to them are no longer in their lives because it's just too big of a shift. And so I asked Spirit, I said, I'd really like for this marriage to survive, because in spite of all of our marital issues, I really truly do love him. And I understand why he abused me, because he was raised in an abusive home. He has shared with me, in spirit, has shared with me that his mother was cold and indifferent and didn't nurture him at all, was very absent, and his father was physically abusive and financially controlling. He was never shown love. And so he can't offer me what he doesn't know himself. And then for me, I had allowed the abuse because I just simply didn't love myself. And as I went through my spiritual awakening and was working with my therapist, we started with, first, you love yourself.
Yes.
If you lay in bed and don't produce anything of value, you are still worthy of being loved. After I went through that, then I went into acceptance. You need to accept where your life is at now. You're never going to be where you were before. Things have shifted. And then lastly, I surrendered into where I was at after reading The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And I thought, you know what? I am here for a purpose. I went through this liver cleanse and the near-death experience for a purpose. And so I just need to accept that I'm going somewhere in my life. And when I did that, I started to heal and everything shifted. And so I had really hoped that my husband would be able to allow me to guide the relationship to healing. But the other thing, and this is specifically what you and I worked on this past May when I went out and did the seminar, whatever it was that Emma put on, I went out there to visit her. And I had a conversation with Spirit about how I set my intentions. And I said, so how do I get my marriage to be fully functioning? And I said, you know, I want a husband whom I trust, and so forth and so on. And I said, so what do I need to do in order to have a husband whom I can trust? Well, you can't let him stay late at work. And Spirit started giving me constraints. And I said, well, no, that's not what I want at all. I don't want to be controlling. I just want a husband. And I said, what am I doing wrong? And Spirit said, well, you need a husband who is trustworthy. I said, oh, well, that makes sense, because it means that he is the one who establishes the trust and not my perspective of him. So I set the intention. I said, I want a husband who is trustworthy. The next morning and I will not put it on here because it was vulgar language, but nonetheless, I was requested to send him an email asking once again about, you know, his infidelities. But the email was really strongly worded. It was sent by Spirit or dictated by Spirit. And 12 hours later, I had my answer. And that he had 2 other relationships. One was before we got married. And I guess I will go into this a little bit. My big thing, I met him when I was 16, and purity was incredibly important. And I wanted a man who'd never been with anybody else. And he asked me to marry him. And I said, you know, I need to think about this. Because I have never dated anybody else, and so give me some time. He went off to law school in California, and he was with another woman, and failed to tell me about it. And I asked him, you know, has there ever been anybody else? And he said, no, I could never be with anybody else that I didn't love. And so we got married when I was 21. And so, you know, that one really, when I heard about both of the infidelities, really shook my world. But the first one really bothered me because I don't know that I would have married him, because I wanted a pure man. And so we have had a lot of ups and downs since May, because he couldn't really own up to what he had done. He said, so I did it. I've told you about it. Move on. I don't understand why it bothers you. And then the second woman, it was also a while ago. And I said, this particular woman you're still friends with, I need you to tell her that you can't be friends with her anymore, because not because you slept with her, but because you lied all of these years. He had offered her a job at his law firm about a year and a half ago. And I said, so obviously, you know, she would have been in my life, and you didn't think about her emotions nor mine, should I find out. And he just couldn't understand. So I told him the weekend that he chose to leave me, I said, I'm drawing a line in the sand. You said you would call her, and you need to call and tell her that you can't be friends with her anymore, and why. And he chose to leave me over that. And I was just heartbroken that he would choose to leave a relationship of 35 years and a woman who has loved him for 30 years and has accepted his behavior over a phone call to a person that he said he doesn't even think about.
Mm-hmm.
So that then ties me into my treatment with you. And that was, Spirit said that what I needed to release that day was the trauma that I had when he told me about the infidelities.
Mm-hmm.
There was an email that he sent me and then a subsequent phone call where I was just crying and hysterical in the car. I was at my friend's in California again after Emma's
Mm-hmm.
seminar. And it was really traumatizing to find out that the man that I thought I had been married to, in addition to the abuse and everything else, they never existed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really incredibly difficult. And going through the treatment with you helped me to reframe it.
Mm-hmm.
So it still exists, but I see it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the beauty of the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So does that answer in a very long way?
No, it's really amazing. And how did your perspective shift on that experience? How did it reframe itself? Because it was very creative from coming from your higher self or subconscious.
Well, the first was you had me do the rewind. And so,
Yeah.
go back to that moment of trauma. And for me, because I'm a visual person, in addition to hearing spirit, when he told me about those infidelities, I visualized them. And it traumatized me. And so the first time when I rewound it, it was he had the opportunity to do that, but he chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I rewound back to the future. And so there really wasn't a trauma for me to experience because it had never actually occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went back again, and it still was working on that issue, and then came back to the present when he told me about that. And then the third time they replayed it, and it did happen.
Mm-hmm.
But they told me, but it has nothing to do with you. It is all his issue. And then I came back to the present when he told me, and I was no longer devastated, if you will, by his infidelities, because I realized he never did anything to me. It was to himself that he was doing this,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the one.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought, oh my goodness. And I know Emma always talks about this, it's not personal, but that was head knowledge. Now I actually replayed it into the past and then brought it back. And now it's resonating within my cells that it really was, it's his issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I am just a bit player in his movie as he's working through his issues. Yeah. So, that's my role in some of this, to be an actor in his play.
Yeah. So this is amazing. This is such an amazing lesson because, as you said, we always hear it. And I went through this. Everyone goes through this. We all hear about how we should detach ourselves from these experiences, not because it's not about us, but about the other person, the abuser, and so on. And we need to just work on our own perception and letting go, etc. And it's easier said than done. So it somehow stays in the brain, like, engraved in our brain. So yeah, that's why it's so interesting to hear how you were able to, with the help of your guides, to just reframe and detach yourself from the burden, because it is the burden of your husband, the abuse and everything. This is now his burden, and you need to go on with your own awakening. And it is a very challenging thing in itself.
Yeah.
Without additional issues. So, and may I ask you, what were your expectations about the session? Did you have any ideas?
I really didn't, because I didn't research the technique. So I just thought I I'm learning I like to have new experiences. I'm rather, well, my nature is to be trusting and just to say, hey, let's see what this is. And so I went in with absolutely no expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cool. I have to say, how you set up the visual that you put your, I was blown away because it's so creative to play back your life. It's a life review, if you will, in
Yeah.
reverse to get you to that point in time. And then to move back and forth. It was beautiful and it was seamless and it was so gentle, so
Mm-hmm.
gentle.
That's why I like this particular technique. We use the rewind technique to treat PTSD actually and trauma, and it is really a good technique because you don't have to go into the traumatizing event because it just reinforces the pain, but you create an environment which is the best for your brain, where you observe and you control. You remember we gave a remote controller into your
Mm-hmm.
hand, and you were able to fast forward and rewind the
Yeah.
past creatively, and that gives your mind, your brain, a possibility to play with these, like a Lego, to play with these elements of the past and reframe them, reshape the experience. Because when we go back, like in a flashback, we just relive that experience, and that's not helpful because it's just the same being reinforced again and again. So you need to, and I'm saying this to everyone who's experiencing flashbacks and PTSD and such trauma, they need to detach themselves by creating a new perspective, being within and without the
Yeah.
experience, and being in control. And a remote controller, just created by your mind,
Yeah.
does this trick. So this is really. And did you have any experience with hypnosis before?
So I work with an energy worker and he had done a past life regression with me and I
Mhm.
had recorded that. And then I've done that twice myself just to kind of see how it works. Um, but there it was, with a long introduction. It's the Dolores Cannon
Oh
methodology.
yeah.
So
Okay.
he
Okay.
did it, and I don't know if she has multiple ones, but it was where I was in a cloud going backwards in time. And but it was not targeted to a particular event. It was just, hey, let's just see
Mm-hmm.
what is the most important former life that your soul wants you to be aware of right now. So I'm familiar with it, and I was able to visualize it, and I mean, that was the first time I've ever done something like that, and it really blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
um, because the first one I had, I was in energy form. They told me I was raw and I don't know anything about history, but I was in one of the pyramids, and I was just an energy form radiating out energy. And then I came into the present with a dove, and I mean, it was just this really kind of surreal thing. So I wasn't in a human form, I was an energy form. And then I came down on the dove, and that I guess represents Jesus. And then there was my little individual lights, and I'm here now to spark other lights to come online. So that's kind of like a connection of what my life's purpose is, I think. I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, but now as I'm moving forward, I realize it.
Mm-hmm.
But your approach was very different.
Mm-hmm.
um, because it was just literally visualize the TV, and there I was. I didn't have to do
Mm-hmm.
any more effort to get into the space. And so I don't know if your technique is easier for people to jump into, or if it's because I've done so much work talking and connecting with spirit that I'm just automatically there. But I mean, you said it, I saw it, I did it, and off we went.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's both because you've done so much work, mental, emotional work, that you are very good at manipulating energy, working with these images, and doing this kind of stuff. So it's, of course, it's much easier to do these techniques with people who already have some foundations. Um, Other people just need to learn and practice a bit more. So with you, we didn't have to do any preparations, anything, because you just did that so fast. It's amazing. So that's the
And let me ask you, because I know, is EMDR also hypnotherapy, or is that something different?
that's somewhat different. It's a bit
Okay.
different, but it also uses the same process of connecting um, the different parts of the brain,
Okay.
stimulating these different parts. And through this stimulation, you go back, so you stimulate those memories, you trigger those memories. But if it's not in your control, so you don't feel that you are in control, and you're not quite prepared for that memory, for that, it's some parts of your brain are creating a pattern, and you are not just recalling a memory, but it feels for your brain as if you are there.
That's the reliving of it. Okay, because that is the distinct difference then between
Yes.
your technique.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. So the brain registers that as a present experience, something that's happening right now. And it's hard for you to get out of the experience and control it at the same time. So what we want is stimulating these parts of the brain, that pattern which holds
Mm-hmm.
your experience, because it's not really just a memory, but it is a whole um, information field. So it is being um, triggered, not really triggered, but stimulated, but in a way that you are in control, and your other parts of your brain are controlling this function, this what's happening here with the experience and your reactions and everything else is being controlled by some other part of your brain, so it's not shut down.
Okay.
When you have these flashbacks, all other parts just shut down, and you're back in time,
Yeah.
and you are reliving, experiencing the same thing. And this is what this new technique actually does. It keeps the other parts of your brain active, so that you can reflect on your own experiences, so you're no longer just a puppet, reliving the thing, but you are in control, and you start to see that, hey, this is just one perspective. Hey, I can move around in this experience. I have the control. I can change things. I can change my feelings, my reactions, my energy. So I'm no longer the victim, but I am the one who controls. I have this information field coming from that experience. But what I do with this information, it is within my control.
Yeah.
So this is the difference.
Okay.
This is a very unique technique in this way.
Okay.
So in this detaches the memory. It becomes a memory. It detaches the experience from the amygdala. Amygdala is the part which reacts as if it's a present threat. So you
Mm-hmm.
react hormonally, stress levels go up, etc. And you remove it, and it becomes just a memory. You know that it happened, but you are in control, like with any other average memory.
Yeah. So
So,
it's not tied to that excessive response or reaction. It's
yes,
just,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Because that's before the call today, I said, well, let me see how it really stuck. So I then went back to sitting in the car when I was having the conversation, and then my visuals, if you will, of going back to those 2 points in time. And I just sat there witnessing them saying, okay, but it did not garner a response to me. I thought, this is cool. So it's been, I think, 2 weeks or so,
Yes.
and it hasn't come back. It
Yes.
just is, it's a memory, but I don't begin sobbing and crying like I did before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So we get stuck in a memory. It becomes our present. For the brain, it seems like present. It can distinguish between a memory and the present time if it's still stimulating those parts of your brain, the amygdala and some other parts of the brain. It can distinguish. It will feel that, oh God, I'm stuck in that moment, reliving it again and again and again.
I
So
call that spin cycle.
yes, yes,
Because I'm in a spin cycle that I can't get out of. Yeah.
exactly.
After my liver cleanse, I thought I was going to die for, I mean, so many years, and I couldn't get out of that fear cycle. And when you're stuck in it and you continually re-trigger that part of your brain, and you can't heal.
Yeah.
And so you have to shift from that to something else. Okay.
Yes, 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 yes. And that's our in our power, within our power, because we can control and we can train our brain to just, detach the two. The memory and the experience become just memories.
Yeah.
No longer the present. So we can have this control. It's really amazing because people are suffering from PTSD for years. And in fact, it can be healed. I don't like this word healed, but changed. It can be changed quite fast if you know how to detach yourself from these cycles. Yeah.
Yeah. From that, just that, it's just, I'm hearing, it's resolved. You resolve it somehow. And
Yeah.
honestly, they're showing me now it's dissolved,
Yes.
because this is the trauma, this is the memory, and the string that connects it. They're showing me it's like cotton candy. It just dissolves. And so you have one, but you don't have the other that comes with it.
Yeah.
So, and I can feel that as I'm going through my healing process, that as issues come up that need to be released, that I am resolving those. But there's, after 35 years, there's a lot.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
a lot of things to work through. And spirit brings up whatever's supposed to come up. So when I also do EMDR treatment, I'm in trauma therapy, which is a little bit more talk therapy, and she does somatic training. And she's very young and green. She hasn't even graduated from school yet, but Spirit said, no, she's the one to work with you. So with each of the different modalities, I'm having a lot of issues come up. And every time I ask Spirit, okay, so what am I supposed to work on with this person? Because, Spirit knows better. And so I just kind of allow them to guide me through the process.
Yeah. That's great that you surrender to spirit, that you allow yourself to trust and just follow your instincts, or these insights, these
Yeah.
what you get from the spirits. How did you learn that? How did you learn to give over control to something you can't see? You can't see your spirit guides, so it's
Well,
something hard.
I've always known there was something out there. And so when I was 5 and went to kindergarten, this was in Germany, and they took us to this beautiful white church. I just remember it was this gorgeous old church, and they did some kind of a sermon, and they're talking about God there. And I thought, because my mother didn't raise us with anything, because she wanted us to choose our religion, our beliefs. So she never mentioned it at home. So I'm sitting there in church, and they're talking about God, and I said, well, of course. And so from that moment on, I connected to God. And then when I was in junior high, my friends invited me to go to church. This was here in America. And so I learned about Jesus, and I connected deeply with the Jesus energy, not necessarily the Jesus of the Bible. I was studying the Bible, and I would say, well, that part is real and that part is not. So I intuit, I didn't know, but I just kind of would pick and choose. No, that's not love, and that's judgmental, and no, and I don't like most of the Old Testament. So I've had an unbelievably deep connection to spirit or God. And I've always talked to God, but it was like bits and pieces, little words that would come through, and more of a feeling of, I am with you, you're safe, you're comforted. And then before I did the liver cleanse in like 2007, I was in church and God said to me, I've got wonderful things in store for you. You're not going to be at your job much longer. And I'm sitting here having this conversation. I said, but I love my job. I'm well paid. Why would I do that? Just trust me. And 5 months later, there was a really nasty severance with my former employer, myself. And I think it's because Spirit was trying to push me out and I just wouldn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was decided for me, if you will. And so then, you know, I got ill and I kept cursing God, saying, seriously, this is it? This is what you're giving me? Just trust me, just trust me. And then when I got to the other side, and the other thing is I used to pray all the time and my prayers were answered. I mean, it was the manifesting thing. I would pray for a parking spot, but I just knew there was God out there and somehow it was working. But now, I mean, honestly, don't shut up right now. I need to create some boundaries with them because they wake me up at 2 a.m, chitter chattering. Oh, and this is going on. And they gave me one the other day, that a channeling where they were talking about near life experience. Mm-hmm. So they wake me up at 3 a.m. because they're so excited. Oh, you're going to channel on your life experience, because that's what most people are doing. And then they just chitter chatter and I can't go back to sleep. So it's not even a question of surrendering at this point to them, because they're so present. They're integrating fully into my body. Mm-hmm. And so they're just, I am them and they are me. And mm-hmm. So it's an interesting process, because even when I'm having conversations with people, if I go out to lunch, they're still there chitter chattering, and then so they'll pop in and, well, you need to say this. And I'm like, okay, so Spirit, so they're chatting with me while I'm in 2 places at once now. Mm-hmm. It's really bizarre. It's hard to describe unless you're there, because I have no idea how. So it started with an absolute trust and faith. And what Spirit has told me is the more you trust and believe, the more you get in return. Mm-hmm. And so as I take actions and steps based on these things. So for example, when my husband's dead friend came through, I think in March or in April, he told me about one of the infidelities. And so I wrote it because Stefan was telling me, tell Jerry to unburden his heart. Because I said, why is he so angry? Why is he so upset? Tell him to unburden his heart. And I'd been doing that for weeks and weeks and nothing was coming. And so I said, Stefan, if you were here, what would you tell him? And then he told me, and I wrote it down, and then I typed it up, and I wrote a cover letter to my husband, and I said, so this is what your dead best friend said to me. This is the cover letter. I attached no truth to it. I'm only giving it to you because he asked me to trust him. So I gave it to my husband, and he lied to me. He said, no, it's not true, and that doesn't sound like Stefan at all. He wouldn't use expletives and things like that. I said, I don't know. So my husband said, no, it's not true. And I believed him. And so I said, okay. And yet a few months later, that was the second infidelity that he mm-hmm. admitted to me. And so when he was like, well, you can't really be talking to Spirit. I'm like, dude, I mean, seriously, I couldn't have no, you just must have guessed right. So, so the more I take steps and actions based on what Spirit says, the more they're willing to entrust me with. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I just had a reading with Jamie Butler last week, mm-hmm. An emergency reading, as I call it, because my life is in such a state of turmoil and other people are giving me other advice. And I said, so am I a clear channel now? And she said, oh yeah, you are absolutely clear. You have no filter. And I said, well, why is it then that I get different information than other people? And she said, well, because your spirit team knows you and your agenda, their agenda, if you will, so well that they're more in tune with your goals, which is for you to preserve this marriage. Whereas other people see it differently, and they also love you and have concerns about, because my husband has narcissistic tendencies and gaslighting. So there's this whole, mm-hmm. There's so much to it, which I don't believe in labels because I don't think it's helpful, but they say you can't ever change a narcissist. And Spirit mm-hmm. is telling me he can change because he's choosing to. Emma has been saying since February that, she did a channeling for me when we were out there. She said, once he literally surrenders, then the marriage can be restored, but he has to surrender. Mm-hmm. So, it's just this multifaceted process mm-hmm. To surrendering to Spirit, and the more you trust, the more they give you. And so I'm trusting, but it's really scary. And the most important thing that I'm learning is I am to be me. Whenever I say, what am I supposed to do today? You, the letter U, be you. If I'm just me, authentically me, that's all I need to worry about. Be a kind, loving human being. Learn to be in your power, which means to love yourself and not to allow people to take advantage of you, to speak up in truth, but to be my true essence. And so that's what I'm working on, and really honoring me, which is I'm a really quirky, funky person. I do not want to conform. I will no longer conform. And I just want to do what I'm here to do, which is my life's purpose. And I'm figuring that out every day. And channeling is part of it somehow, helping people through my personal health journey because of how I did the liver cleanse, how I healed, which was by detoxing the body, following the medical medium. Then my son had a similar issue. Then also doing energy work on my son to help to get his energy moving so that he could heal. So there's just this multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to healing that I'm supposed to do something with. I have no idea yet. But they give me little bits and pieces. And so every day I just trust. And if I continue to trust, they will build it for me. And I will get to wherever my soul desires to go, I guess. And part of that is going through this with my husband, because they've told me there are so many women who are in a similar situation that I'm in, where they're abused in some fashion and disempowered. And you need to learn to love yourself, accept where you're at, surrender. And in doing that and setting intentions for what you want to attract for you or towards you, and in doing that, you completely recalibrate the future. But you have to have trust and faith that that can come about and will come about in spite of what you see playing out before your eyes. And so I keep trusting that what they tell me with my husband will come into play, even though nothing that I see shows that, because we haven't spoken in 2 months. What we have done are email communications, and they're really kind of nasty. But I'm taking some steps to resolve that. And that was based on the conversation that I had with Jamie last week. I said, so this is what Spirit's kind of telling me now. And she said, no, you're getting it. That's exactly what your next step is to be in order to help your husband. Because if you abandon him now, he will fall off a cliff and he will never come back. And so I'm to become a loving, kind person, the person that he fell in love with, setting no expectations, no demands on him, and just loving him unconditionally. So now I'm sending him texts every morning saying, I love you, have a blessed day. And communicating in a really loving manner, even though he told me 3 weeks ago he wants a divorce. So I'm going in trust and faith that what I'm doing now will shift his inner world somehow, so that he can heal. And once he heals and loves himself, because I keep saying, dude, you just need to love yourself. So you abused me. Yeah, we know that, but it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you're a product of your environment. You need to own up that you did this, but love yourself because you did the best that you could. And if you can really love yourself, then when I say, hey, you abused me, it doesn't trigger you. You say, yeah, I did do that. It wasn't very nice of me, was it? But it won't get that nasty reaction where he then continues to abuse me going forward as I speak up. And so I have no idea, but this is my trust and my faith that somehow this journey is going to go somewhere beautifully for him and beautifully for me, without any sense of control. I just am to be me, the loving, kind person that I am. And by sending out that vibration, he has a choice to accept it or not. And Jamie seems to think that right now he's very receptive to it. So, it's all it's all so intricately tied together to the truth that you did,
It's really amazing. And I wanted to ask, because that could help a lot of women who are in an abusive relationship. How did you shift from the victim mindset to this empowered woman mindset, but still being able to forgive and see the other person not just as an enemy, but just simply a person who has his issues?
Okay, so gosh, that's multi-pronged. So the first is that I had to love myself. Once I loved myself, I was able to recognize the abuse. Before that, he always told me it was my fault. Because I did whatever it was, he had to control me, he had to calm me down. He had to control the situation. I mean, he tried to kill me once. And so there's, you know, he was choking me. And I did that in EMDR. We replayed it and they showed me. I said, well, why did this happen? And I recreated, similar with you, I recreated where I pushed him down. I came into a place of power and pushed him down. And he was weeping and crying. And then all of these energies, these bodies, if you will, people were flying out of him. And I said, what is that? And they said, well, these are all of his ancestors who were first abused and then abused somebody. They said, well, how many are there? And they said, there's like 4,000 of them. So I'm sitting there, and then he morphed from a grown man into a baby. They told me to pick him up and really hold him because his mother never did that. He shut down that part of him that trusts other people because she never tended to his needs. So he became a fear-based person. And therefore, as I understand it, that's where a lot of the narcissistic tendencies come from. When they're not properly loved as a child, they can't give love. It's all out of fear. And then I held him for however long, and then he turned back into a human being in full form. And then Archangel Michael was superimposed over him, and they said, it is done. So I'm sitting there and I said, what the hell was this? What does this have to do with me and him trying to kill me? And they said, you're just a big actor in his play. This had nothing to do with you. It's all his. And you've just reshifted this whole story in your own mind, and you've helped him to release the trauma. So the lady who was doing the EMDR said, okay, I've never seen that before. That was really different. But it made me realize it never had anything to do with me. Now, I was the person who's been traumatized by it all these years and have memories and fears, but it never had anything to do with me. And so, I mean, that's the best I can explain, that when somebody does something really horrid, they're literally doing the best that they can because of something that happened to them. And so, and for me, because I talk to spirit, and so whenever we would have a really nasty argument, I would say, okay, so what am I to learn from this? Because I'm really, really triggered right now. Oh, well, you're learning, and they keep telling me, you're learning to build your marble staircase, your spine. You're finally standing up for yourself. So a lot of that is for me to find my voice. And for my husband, it is for him to learn to unconditionally love himself. Because once he loves himself and just accepts it, this is who he was, but not because he's a bad person, but because that was just all he could do. When he can really forgive himself and love himself and fill himself with that love, then he can properly love the people in his life. And if he doesn't, then he won't. And so Jamie said, if you now go from this harder person showing him your strength to this soft, gentle, kind woman that he fell in love with, you will establish trust again with him, and it will help him on his healing journey. How, I don't know, and I don't worry about that. I am just to love him unconditionally now. But if I didn't have my spirit team here explaining this to me, it would be a lot harder, because it helps to pull me out of the victim mindset, number one. And number two, they were telling me, they said, you know, you chose him, and you chose this really long journey with him of abuse. And then you had your spiritual awakening, and everything is perfectly timed so that, number one, you could come into your own power, stand up for yourself, and realize that he would not have been able to abuse you if you had left him or stood up for yourself. But it wasn't in your nature because you didn't love yourself enough. And also, I'm a light and love person. I parent my children different. I mean, I parent my children differently than the others, because my theory is I want to love them like 90 or 80% of the time. So when I have to criticize them or discipline them, it's a smaller portion. And most people don't do it that way. And I don't know, I'm more understanding with my children because I don't really like conflict. It doesn't resonate with me. So with my husband, when I first started to stand up for myself when we were first married and he started abusing me, because there was so much conflict, I was shutting down and shutting down. A healthy person would have stood up and said, I'm out of here. But Spirit also told me this last week. I did abandonment issues, and it goes back to my childhood, my birth father. He treated my mother poorly, and he abandoned me. I saw him after the age of 2, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times. He was just not interested in a relationship with me. So with my husband, I had such abandonment issues, and I wanted to be loved so desperately that I kept clinging to him. And therefore I didn't have a healthy relationship with him. So I did my part of the dance. Doesn't excuse his abusive behavior, but I always had the ability to leave, and I chose not to, because it was not my time yet. And with the spiritual awakening, this is my time now to stand up and to give other women the resources to say, when it is your time, when you love yourself unconditionally and are willing to stand up and expect more out of your partner, when that is there, then you can do it. But if you try to take, because I left my husband after 7 years of marriage and I went back because I didn't love myself. He knew how to control and manipulate me. So I went back and he promised me everything would be different, and it shifted. So it was underground. But now I can see it, and spirit tells me, oh, this is when he said this. Because I'm like, oh, he said that, how nice. Oh no, he's trying to control you, and you need to look at it from this perspective. Oh, so, I'm now seeing it as truth. And in doing that, I'm integrating those energies into my body so that when other people do that stuff, I see it as truth versus however I see it. So with my husband, when he's doing something nasty, I can see it as truth. This is how he's behaving, but this is what's going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he's being what appears to be kind, but or I shouldn't say that with him, but it was more his mother-in-law. I mean, my mother-in-law. There's this manipulative aspect. Now I understand what's going on in the energies behind her behavior. It's like, oh my goodness, I thought she loved me unconditionally. No, oh my goodness, she doesn't. Mm-hmm. So very complex.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really amazing. I'm listening to you like, like TV show. It's really amazing the way you connected these dots. And I remember in the session you were talking about the mother-in-law, how strongly she affected your relationship with your husband, and you're kind of trying to please her and being really so, I don't know, scared of her. Were you scared or
Well, I was seeking her approval.
yeah.
She's this good Christian woman. So again, my family was quirky at best, and there was no religious construct, and my father traveled a lot with his work. So it was, and then my brother left because he was the oldest. And so we were a blended family. He's my stepdad. But so we were 4 girls and a mother. So it was this female dominated household, and it just was. And when I met his mother, because I don't know, she gave off this real calm energy. And excuse me, I just fell in love with her because I thought, this is kind of who I want to be. Look at what she gives off. Well, and as we found out, in that I had that really icky feeling in my 2nd and 3rd chakra. Yeah. And you asked, where did it come from? And it took me to the very first day I met her, and that I literally gave my power away to her as my husband, then boyfriend, was standing there observing, will my mother accept her? Will she be worthy? And I gave her my power in that weird triangulated relationship. Mm-hmm. And so all these years I've been seeking her approval to be the perfect mother, the perfect wife. And it's within the construct of, your place in the home. The male is the head of the household. And so I was really seeking her favor, but giving up myself in that process. And now she lives next door to me, which is incredibly unhealthy right now. And I've realized that over the years, because she's been here for 4 years, how much it has affected me. I mean, like when I would sit down and do my channeling, I'd have to hide it from her because she's this Christian who will tell me you're going to hell. I have a son who is gay, and she has frequently said, gay people go to hell. And my husband apparently, according to spirit, told her a week or 2 ago, and I did I got a channeling from them saying that the mother will not judge her son because that's her son, even though he abused me, but she judges her grandson because he's gay. Mm-hmm. So this is the type of person that I'm dealing with. She is the woman whose granddaughter was roofied and raped by, I think it might have been 2, but at least 1 male. Mm-hmm. And rather than having compassion for her granddaughter, she says she and her daughter, so the girl's mother, both say it's the granddaughter's fault because she was at that party. So this is the type of woman that I've been trying to please all these years, and have lost myself in that, as well as in my husband's role within the family. that I was trying to be that perfect Christian wife. And I don't want to be that. And honestly, I never did. But through the abuse, the physical abuse of you can't say that, you can't do that, I was kind of molded into this. I mean, there was nothing left of me, honestly. And now I'm coming back into the person that I was before I got married. And when I was dating him, I still had that energy of, I know me and don't tell me what to do. I know me better than you. And I think at some level, as my husband sees me, I think he'll recognize that this is the woman that he fell in love with. And, you know, that's what Spirit says, that I'm coming back online. And it's like, oh, well, this is the one I fell in love with, but where did she go? Well, you kind of killed her off because of the abuse. And then my mother-in-law was also doing that. So it's just this weird thing. So I need to now come into my power, and not in a negative way, but just to be authentically me and say, this is who I am. This is who I wish to be. And you either choose to be with me or not, but you don't get to control who I am any longer. I am modeling for my children finally what it is to see a mom who believes in herself, because there were so many conflicts when my children were growing up where I was not permitted to speak up, where I would say something and my husband would shut me down and say, this is not your place to speak up. So my children saw that for their entire lives. And I didn't realize that. And only now are they telling me how neglected and abused they have felt too. So I was trying to hide this from them, but it was there the whole time. You know, it's just so, it really is interesting. And I have to take my responsibility for that too, that I could have stood up more for them, but I was terrified to do so. And I was also ill and on medication. So there are a lot of factors. The medication, it was mirtazapine, and it affects your brain function. And so I couldn't think clearly. I was sedated the whole time. I was on an antipsychotic because the liver cleanse so damaged my body. I got mercury poisoning and it went throughout my whole body. And so my central nervous system was so overly stimulated that I couldn't sleep. I had anxiety that was off the charts, and it wasn't a mental anxiety, it was physical. So it was just jittery all the time. And then it spiraled into clinical depression, and Spirit told me, I thought it was the liver cleanse, and Spirit said, no, it's because when you got ill and your husband, he literally was not there for you. And so I got depressed and I just wanted to die, and I had to lean on other people. He kept telling me, I can't talk with you about this. I got to keep my head in the game and go to work. So you talk to other people about your issues. So I got a wonderful circle of friends and a therapist and an acupuncture, you know, all these other people helped me to heal while he paid the bills, I guess. And so now I'm learning to now stand up for, not regret anything that I've ever done, because this is what got me here. But I'm here now, and what can I do with this? I want to heal. I want to heal. I want to be a whole person. I want to be a whole mother. I would like to have a relationship with somebody else, preferably with my husband, if not him, then somebody else who loves and adores me as I am. But I can only get to that place. I can only attract those things when I really feel it in my gut. And that's the thing with my mother-in-law, that I had to release her and the control that she had over me. I don't need her love, her adoration, her acceptance, her approval. I don't need anything from her. She's the one who abused my husband. I don't need that from her. It's irrelevant. I need to love me. And so that's where I'm coming. And I think that that's part of what I am to teach others, to find that love within themselves. And when you find that love within yourself and you set your intentions for what you really want to attract, everything that magnetically does not, you know, I just see it as magnets, and your magnet puts something out and you will only attract that which is a perfect match. And if you have somebody who's in your life who doesn't match that frequency, you're going to repel them and push them away. And that's what I'm going through with my husband. I'm literally repelling him because I know who I am, and he has to make the decision, do I wish to be with her? And if so, I need to change my magnet to be a healthier match, or I need to move on. So energetically, that is at the core of what's going on, which, you know, they tell me up here, but my heart says, I want him back home because I love him.
So you have an amazing journey, and I love to read your posts. Really, I have been reading them way before we met online. So how can people read your blog?
Oh goodness. Well, they can send me a Facebook request. My name is Kati, and my last name is COP as in Peter, P as in Peter, Ler. And then I also have my channeled messages, and these are on how, well, right now it's on how to find your worth, your worthiness. It started off with the journey with my husband, and then 2 weeks ago they said the end. And now we're going on to, so either, I'm not certain why it's the end, but that piece of it is done. And now they just talk about how to figure out how to be worthy. And that's at Firefly Energy. And then if my children ever like move forward, I'm supposed to set up a website that will be firefly.energy. And I'm going to have my oils on there. I'm going to have mini readings. I am going to, so Eric and I have been working on, it's a little pendulum board, but he calls it the energy board. And that what he has said is, if people want to learn how to channel or talk to spirit, they're always talking with us, but we don't understand the frequency, how it attaches to a word. And so when you use something like this, they will literally spell the words out for you. And with a lot of practice, you will attach the word in your mind with the vibration that they're sending you. And that's how you become a channel, or, you know, connect to spirit deeply. I don't know. I mean, I haven't, it's not going as quickly as I'd hoped. And then, so they gave me 3 oil blends that help the body to ascend. And those body, mind, and spirit, and those help your body to release the toxins and to increase the unconditional love in your body. And when you have unconditional love, a higher frequency of it, wherever you have emotional trauma, it literally pushes it out to the surface to be healed, which is what I'm going through right now. So everything that I've been going through is designed to prepare me for what I'm supposed to do to help others. And they keep telling me I can only help others if I've personally experienced it, which I'm not really pleased about. But so every time something new comes up, I try to step back and say, okay, I know I'm in a lot of pain right now, but what is the benefit of this? How can this help others, as well as what am I to learn from it? And so that's the spiritual side that I'm really thankful for, because I can understand the purpose and the meaning. So
thank you very much for sharing your journey, because I think it could help a lot of women, because there are so many, not just women, but mostly it's us who allow ourselves to believe that we are absolutely powerless, that we are worthless. And that's such a shame, because every woman and every person really should know that all of us are unique, really unique, and we all have these gifts. You already came to this point of awakening, and I love to hear about your spiritual journey. That's why I was reading your posts. So thank you very much for having this conversation with me. I'm truly glad to hear it all from you.
Yeah, and the other thing is, for anybody who has what I would call health issues or any kind of a trauma, I also have a private or a secret Facebook group, so nobody knows who's in there. And it's a surrender group. And so it talks about how to surrender in order to heal. And initially it was to heal more from health issues, similar to what I went through. But like Stefan's mother, who's a dear friend of mine, she is in that group. So she is dealing with the loss of her only son, who is the love of her life. And so she also has found a place in that surrender group, because it's healing through a surrender process. So if anybody has an interest in that, you can send me a private message as well, and I can add you to that group. Again, I have no idea where it's going. Spirit tells me when to post and what to post. And then I also post my own personal things, but I have no idea where this is going, so you can join me in my very own surrender experiment.
Okay, add me too to the surrender group. I'm really interested.
I just added you last week. That was the one that I added you to.
Oh, okay, that's it. Okay, good. Because
I want the people in there to hear about this rewind technique. And then I've also got 2 other mirtazapine groups where I think that the people could benefit, because they're all stuck in the trauma. When you have this massive body trauma where you think you're going to die or something, and you're stuck in the spin cycle, they can't get out of it, and they're in such a fear-based place. Yeah. I think your technique could help these people who are so sensitive emotionally to reframe what they've gone through and help them to get to the place of surrender. Because when you're in the spin cycle and people say surrender, they don't know what that means.
Yeah, yeah, because you are just repeating the same pattern. It seems like to stop is impossible because you are in this spin cycle, as you said. It's reaction, 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 reaction all the time. So the brain is always triggered. It's very hard to untrigger the brain and to surrender, because surrendering is really just allowing things to happen. But it's so hard when we are conditioned. So all these functions in the brain are constantly working on reaction, reaction, reaction. So it needs to stop. Yeah, it's not easy. I know it's not easy.
But we can all do it.
Yes.
We are all capable of it. And that's, I mean, if you had seen how the state that I was in after the liver cleanse, it was the most terrifying thing, though my husband leaving me was a different form of terrifying. And I had to find my way out of that. And I knew that if I didn't find my way out, I would be stuck on medication for the rest of my life. And I didn't want that quality of life. So I worked really hard. So anybody, if I can get through that, truly anybody can, because I was having visions of my death. And, you know, when you're at that low state of depression with everything else, and when you can come back from that, anybody can.
Yeah.
So I hope to be a beacon of hope.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for inviting me on today. Really appreciate it.
Oh,
I hope somebody finds some value in this. It's a crazy journey. I mean, and I do feel bad for my husband because, I mean, while he did sign up for this, he didn't sign up for it. You know, he hasn't.
Okay, so let's connect. If anyone wants to read really more and to understand this journey and the lessons that your spirit guides give to you, then just connect. Let's connect and just let us know. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Thank you, and I really enjoyed this show. You didn't need to be so very.
Nervous.
It's perfect. It was really so enjoyable, amazing. Oh God, it was really very inspiring. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Thank you.
And I don't know how to hang up, so you're gonna have to do it.
I need to figure it out myself.
I just have one screen on my iPad. There's no, yeah, I have no idea. There's a plus and a minus. How does this work?